Hi everyone, welcome back to Random Accessible Maths. I'm Dr. Ramchurn, and in today's lesson we'll be looking at fractions, decimals and percentages, and specifically how we can convert between all three. So we've learned about fractions, we know about decimals, and we've learned recently about percentages. Check out the link in the description for that. But all of these are just different ways of representing a number. And so we should be able to convert between each one depending on which is the most suitable for the situation that we've been given. So, as a conversion, we've seen already how fractions can become decimals by using the definition of fraction. So what do I mean by this? Well, a very simple one that I can show you is that 1/2 is 0.5. So the number 1/2 is the numerator 1 divided by the denominator of 2. So this, remember, is a division. And we can show with long division in the bus stop method, the 2 going into the 1. We can then show how this becomes 0.5 as follows. The 2 goes into the 1 0 times, so we need to carry that 1 to the next decimal place, which is the 0, which now becomes a 10. Remember the decimal point on the answer as well. And the 2 into the 10 is 5, giving us a result of 0.5. Okay, so we've just seen an example of changing a fraction into a decimal by using long division. Well, what if we wanted to change the decimal into a percentage? Well, that should be very straightforward, as percentages are fractions where the denominator is 100. So if we look at the decimal places, so in this case the 0.5, we know that this represents the unit and the next position represents tenths. The position afterwards represents 100ths. And with 0.5 there is a 0 in that position. So we can look at this position, the hundredths place, and then read off the percentage from there. Alternatively, you can just multiply the decimal by 100 to convert into a percentage, in which case the 0.5 is equivalent to 50%. So to get from a decimal to a percentage, you can quickly multiply by 100 and make sure you write the decimal where the 100th position is. If you want to read that off, you can put that over 100 and change that numerator into a percentage. So that's going from fraction to decimal and decimal to percentage. So what about the reverse? Okay, let's take a look at this example. We want to change the percentage, 73%, into a decimal. Well, we'll just use the reverse of what we learned earlier, where 73 is over 100, and then we will write down that as a decimal where the 3 is in the hundredths position. So this would be 0.73, remembering that this position is the hundredths position, meaning 73 over 100 is 0.73. So that should be very straightforward for any percentage. Let's do one more example. We'll do a little bit of a harder one. What about 24.7% if we wanted to change that into a decimal? Well, we can use the same technique, 24.7 over 100, and basically we're dividing by 100. So if the rule from earlier was to multiply by 100, we can just divide by 100 and shift the decimal point 2 places back to get 0.247. And remembering that this is still the 100ths position. So essentially, divide by 100 gives us the conversion from percentage to decimal. Now what about from decimals into fractions? This technically is the hardest one, or can be the hardest one, but hopefully we'll be able to understand how. Okay, let's start with a simple example. we want to convert 0.7 into a fraction. Well, if we look at the position of the decimal, this 7 is in the 10ths position. So we can simply write down that this is 7 over 10. If we have a 2 decimal place number, 0.63, then we'll look at the final digit, the 3, which is in the hundredths position, and this is now 63 over 100. Now, if this 2 decimal number, like 0.25, we can change it into 25 over 100, just like this example, but we do need to check if this can be simplified, and 25 and 100 share a common factor of 25. So this can be simplified into a quarter. If we go further to 3 decimal places, 0.791, then this position is the thousandths position, so that's the fraction that we'll use with 1000 on the bottom, 791. And this doesn't just work with numbers less than 1, we can also convert numbers that are greater than 1 into fractions. For example, here we have 3.2. We can have a mixed number where we ignore the 3 and any numbers before it and have 3 and 2 over 10, which would be 3 and a fifth. Or, if you really wanted to, you could have the 3.2 where this is in the 10th position, and then this could become a top-heavy number directly, as we could have 32 over 10, which is equivalent to 3 and 2/10. So the rule still holds, but make sure you're cancelling down afterwards. So we'll now take a look at a list of decimals, percentages and fractions that we should be able to convert very quickly, and it will help us a lot in future questions. Okay, our first list of fractions that we should know, we'll start with 1/2 as we did earlier. 1/2 is equivalent to 0.5 and 50%. If we were to halve 1/2, we can get a quarter. Halving the decimal 0.5 gives us 0.25, which is 25%. 3/4 is also a very common number that we'll need to know, which is 0.75 and 75%. Now, 1/3 and 2/3 are a bit awkward. I'll show you and then we'll fill in the table. To work out 1/3 as a decimal, we'll do the division. How many 3's go into 1? So we can do our method over here. So 3's into 1 go 0 times, and the remainder of 1 will carry over to the 0. And now we say how many 3's go into the 10, which is 3, remainder 1. And as you can see, this results in an infinite loop, where the remainder is 1, going 3 times into it, remainder 1. So this is the decimal 0.333, and this repeats forever. It's also known as 0.3 recurring. But to change into a percentage, we still multiply by 100 to get the percentage, so this would be 33.3 recurring percent. Now, 2/3 is twice as big as 1/3, so you could use this result and double it to find out the 2/3. Or do long division, how many 3's go in 2, and you can find that this result will be 0.6 recurring, and the percentage 66.6 recurring. These dots, the 3 dots, just show that that decimal is repeating forever. There is another way of writing down a recurring decimal, which we'll take a look at in a future video. Now, let's move on to some other percentages that we should remember. Okay, the next percentages that we'll take a look at are going to also be very useful. 1/5 is equivalent to 0.2, which is 20%. 1/10 is 0.1, which is 10%. And 1/8, let's do some long division. How many 8s go into 1? So we write 0, carry the 1, 8s into 10 go once, remainder 2, 8s into 20 go twice, remainder 4, and 8s into 40 go 5 times. This is 0.125, which is 12.5%. This one is quite uncommon, but it is useful to remember. Another percentage that would be useful is the fraction 1, where you can have 1/1, which is 1 as a decimal as well, and as a percentage that's 100%. I suppose as a fraction we should technically write 1/1, and maybe as a decimal you can write down 1.0. But all three of these are equivalent. And another one that would be useful to remember is the number 2. If we have 2/1, 2.0, this can be 200%. So remember, percentages can go beyond 100, so we should be able to convert higher numbers than 1 into a percentage. So, hopefully you've learned something new today. Please recommend the video to anyone who you think would benefit, and I hope to see you in a future video after you like, comment, and subscribe. Take care.